Hello and welcome to the OTB channel. Can you believe it? Yesterday the channel passed 100 videos. Wow. Never thought we'd get there. It's got to be time for a ramble. It really has. Join me after the intro. Okay, welcome back. Let me just take a glug. Oh, nice cup of coffee. Okay, so hello everyone. As you know, you've seen from the title, 100 videos the channel has actually got up from yesterday. This is actually 101. And it's quite a milestone. The channel started on the 1st of June 2019 as a little bit of an experiment, really. I wasn't planning anything long term. I just wanted to see if I could do something and put it out there. And over the course of the last year or so, the channel has grown and grown. And I mean, 100 videos. We've got, I think to date, 8,750 subscribers, which is a rate of growth that I'm really impressed with. I know that many of these million subscriber channels out there would see that as small potatoes. But for me, the thought that over 8,700 people want to see regular videos, because that's why people subscribe. They want to see what I produce coming up in their streams. I'm flabbergasted. I continue to be amazed. And I've found over the year that I'm just enjoying producing the channel more and more. So I thought at this 100 video marker, it was perhaps time to go back to a real good old ramble. And for those of you who've watched my rambles before, it's a sort of unstructured conversation with you out there and myself, just talking about some of the things that I've been thinking of. And I thought that today was a particularly good time to answer some of the why questions that I ask myself sometimes, and I often get asked by people commenting on the videos. The big one here, why do I use Linux? Why did I start this channel? What do I enjoy about doing the channel? And also looking back at some of the highlights and what I have planned for the channel in the future. So it's going to be very much, rambly. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Hey, pick your poison. But to help those out who just want to jump to a particular section, I'll stick a thing up here with the timings on, and I'll put the timings down in the video description. So without further ado, let's talk about why I use Linux. Right, so why does this old bloke use Linux as his primary operating system? That's a really difficult thing for me to answer. And I think part of it's to do with just having a particular mindset, being quite technically minded and enjoying technology. That said, I mean, I'm from a generation where many people my age, let's be blunt, just don't have a clue about computers. And I'm not surprised, really, because we went to school in an era where there just weren't any. In fact, I was 31, 32 before I used my first computer back in the 90s. And what had actually happened was I'd been working in a particular job and I got made redundant. There was a bit of a recession going on in the early 90s. And I made the decision to become a mature student. And I got to the university and they said that they would prefer all of the essays I produced to be typed up. So I thought, oh, right, okay, well, I haven't got a typewriter. I'll need to go out and buy one. And someone suggested to me, no, don't go and get a typewriter. They're old school. Things are moving on now. You use a word processor. So I said, okay. And I managed to get hold of one cheap through someone I knew who knew someone who was selling one. And let me just go to the split screen here Does anybody remember these? The Amstrad PCW. This was my first experience of using a computer. I suppose it would have been about 1993, and it was a horrible thing. It didn't have a hard drive. You used to boot off this non-standard floppy disk. I think it was a 3-inch disk. It wasn't like the standard 2.5-inch floppy, and it was a long way from what we know these days, but it did the job, and it came with one of these horrible daisy wheel printers that used to rattle the whole house. So, yeah. So I started with that, and I got really quite interested in the concept, and I went a stage further, and I bought myself the early edition of this book, a Haynes manual, which you normally associate with cars. And Haynes produce, I don't know if it's the same all over the world, but certainly in the UK, Haynes produce manuals for servicing and mending the particular make and model of your car. But this one, build your own computer, was there. And so I got hold of this, and I decided, well, look, this doesn't look too hard. I want to upgrade to a better PC, because the Amstrad was clearly quite old-fashioned, and everybody was talking about this new thing, Windows 3.1, that was coming out. So, yes, so I started building computers, and I got quite good at it, built computers for my whole family, and initially, throughout the 90s, certainly, they were all running Windows 3.1, then Windows 95, then Windows 98, then Windows XP, etc., etc. And I got so into it that I even took an IT Techs qualification, the CompTIA A+ exam, and I eventually started working as an IT tech. But I think it was shortly before I got to the stage of working as an IT tech that I became aware of this thing called Linux. I can't quite remember where, if I'm honest, but I think it was SUSE, OpenSUSE. Well, it wasn't OpenSUSE there, it was just called SUSE. I think there was a boxed edition in PC World. Was it a SUSE Personal 9 or 9.1 or something like that? So I bought that, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting, and gave it a try on an old PC with a K62 CPU in it, and it never really worked. It didn't. It just didn't have enough power for SUSE. So that went by the wayside, and I left the idea of Linux for a while, until I came across another distribution called Xandros. And Xandros was Debian-based, and it was, again, a distro that you bought, and I started playing around with that. And I don't know what it was, it suddenly triggered my interest, and from there I went on a mad binge of distro hopping from the beginning of 2004 onwards. And since 2004, I've used Linux whenever I can as my main operating system. Now, that's not to say that Windows or Mac pushed me into it. I never had a problem with any other operating system. I still use Windows for work. I have a 2013 MacBook Air downstairs, but I spent 90% of my time when I'm on a computer working in Linux. Why is that? I don't really know a tangible answer other than to say there's something about putting something together yourself and knowing that what you're using is your own customized thing that I get a great deal of satisfaction out of. And this is what sparks the hobbyist in me, really, that it's like an ongoing experiment, the experiment that keeps on giving and never ending. And I think for me, that's what's kept me interested in Linux for the last 16 years, that there's always something new to learn and always something new to play with. Now, none of that takes away from the fact that I also use Linux because it allows me to just get on with my job. So there is a functional aspect there as well. I mean, I often get comments to some of my videos when I'm playing around with something, Mr. Functionalist, who says, some people just want to install something and get on. Well, great. Linux will do that for you as well. That on its own wouldn't have been enough of a motivation for me to do it, because I can just get on in Mac, I can just get on in Windows. That side of it, what I consider work over there, isn't the fun part. That's just the functional part. The fun part about Linux for me is being able to fiddle and being able to play. And I think that's why I'm still interested. In fact, it's quite... Looking back, I mean, as you know, I've spoken about this before. I spent quite a few years in IT, and 3 or 4 of those years was actually working for a Linux-based server company where I was working on Linux all the time. Interestingly enough, though, somewhere in my mind, I started to associate Linux with work at that point, and I don't think I really played with a distribution properly throughout my time at that company. I still used Linux, but I wasn't a hobbyist then. It was about work. And it was only when I left that I became a hobbyist again. It's strange. I'm not quite sure how my mind works, but it's the interest. It's the ability to fiddle. And I think as long as that interest keeps going, that's what will continue to drive this channel forward. I'm not a highly technical person. I'm a highly technically interested person, if that makes any sense to you. I use Linux because it's never let me down. That's not to say that it hasn't broken on occasion, because it has, but it's always easy to get back up and running again. And there's something in me that every time something breaks, you go, oh, flipping heck. But there's another part that goes, excellent, let's find out what's gone wrong. So that's just something in me. So why do I use Linux? What's the point? Well, the point of it is I enjoy it. It's an operating system that me and it just gel. We get on with each other. And certainly once I'm retired and I no longer have to use Windows in the workplace, I will be using Linux 100% of the time. I may even upgrade that 2013 Mac to Linux at some point. But to be honest, I boot into that little laptop so infrequently now because the battery's basically on its way out that I've just left it alone. But yeah, so that's why I use Linux.
Hello, welcome YouTube land to the OTB channel, or Old Tech Bloke to give it its full name.
Well, that was cringeworthy. That was my first video on the 1st of June 2019. Sorry about the volume there. I haven't quite figured out how to get volume from YouTube videos to play through OBS. I've not done it before, but neither here nor there. So why did I go through the bother of setting everything up? Well, ultimately, I didn't really have any long-term plans. I'd taken to watching YouTube, DistroTube in particular, but a whole range of other people. And, when you sit back and you sometimes think, I'm sure I could do that. I'm sure I've got lots that I could say, and it might be worth, putting myself out there. So I bought myself a little Logitech C920 and the Yeti microphone, which was actually quite a significant cost with those two of them. And I decided to have a go, as you saw. It's quite cringy. The lighting's dreadful. The audio quality is appalling. But looking back just over a year ago on how far I think the channel's come, I'm amazed. And I remember being terrified doing that video, the fact that I was going to put it out there for millions of people to potentially watch. Well, I needn't have worried because there weren't many people who actually watched it. But nevertheless, that was the first. And I kind of kept putting videos out there about particular subjects. And over the course of the year, what has been my motivation for, certainly when I'm working full time, I'm on this stupid flexible system at the moment where I'll work a few days, then I'll be not working a few days. So I'm waiting to go back full time to work at the moment, which is why you've had a few more videos. But certainly when I'm working full time, you would always get a Saturday video. But I soon learned that these Saturday videos, they might be half an hour or so, but they take about 5 or 6 hours to do from start to finish. So why do I keep going up and doing them every week when I could possibly be doing something a little bit more relaxing? Well, it's hobby time. I do it because I enjoy doing it. And over the year, after a very slow start, I got a bit of a shout out from DT at DistroTube after a month or two, and he rocketed me up to very nearly to 1,000 subs. And it's just built from there. 8,750 subs. Guys, this is the time to say thank you so much for supporting the channel. To this day, I don't really know why so many people have subscribed, but I'm really grateful that you have. And it does make it feel worthwhile when people subscribe, I must say. So, yeah, the channel has evolved, but it's still a hobby channel, very much a hobby channel, and I do it because I'm interested in it. It started to produce a little bit of money through the advertising. I started to monetize it probably about 6 months ago. But then, of course, I realized that the money that you earn off YouTube when you haven't got 1 million subscribers is pretty minimal. It's a nice addition. It's enough to go out for a couple of pints a week and perhaps have a few takeaways, but that's about it. It's never going to support me or become my pension, that's for sure. But it was an extra. And to be honest, I only monetized it, again, out of interest more than anything else, to see, I wonder what it actually earns. Well, I found out not very much. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the point of why I did it. The channel itself, in terms of its subject area, it started off very much doing review after review after review. And I varied that a little bit, certainly over the last 3 or 4 months, where I've tried to do a mix and match more than anything else. You'll see a few rambles scattered here and there where I just want to have a discussion about something or the channel in general. I still do reviews that interest me. If I just did a review a week, as I started doing, I think I'd become very bored, because you'd just start reviewing things for the sake of reviewing them. And yeah, it's hard to keep the motivation going when you're doing that. So I've started to mix and match and do a few kind of how-to tutorials and to focus in on things like yesterday when I looked at graphical tools for file sharing. And I think it's always going to be like that. I think it was Chris Titus Tech said that you don't really get a feel of what your channel's about until you've got 100 videos under your belt. And I think that's correct. It's still evolving, and I think it will continue to evolve. It will always be Linux based. And I'll always do distro reviews because, well, I enjoy doing the distro reviews, but I'm going to mix and match it. And I'm aware that it's the distro reviews that get the big, the views. If I put out a Linux Mint video, I know it's going to do really well as far as views are concerned. But sometimes I want to do something like this, which won't get that many views. And I want to kind of proceed with this channel on the basis that I can almost ignore that. I just produce what I produce. And I would like to say that I sit down and plan everything out, but I don't. I actually have a long list of things that I could potentially do, most of which are suggested by you guys. And I tend to decide on the subject area in the morning before I do the video, or the day before at most. And I don't script it. Well, I don't script it. I come and sit in front of my camera and I talk, which is probably why my videos tend to be a little bit on the long side, because they're not scripted. They evolve, and I've always seen it as a sort of discovery process. I'm trying to discover something when I'm doing something like a distro review, and I'm taking you guys along with me, so I find what I find. So why do I do the channel? Because I like doing the channel, and more so over time. I mean, I've bought lots more kit, so I'd like to think that the channel comes across as more professionally. I've got a much better camera now. It's not brilliant. It's a little Sony A5100, but it's doing the job. I've got lighting. I am eventually, and money is the key thing here, eventually going to move into the cabin that's now been built down the bottom of the garden. But that's not quite as simple as it sounds, because I've got to get everything set up there. And during this lockdown period, that sort of put a halt to all of that. But yeah, so that's why I do what I do. And I think as long as I've still got the interest, I'm going to continue to do what I do. And we'll see how it goes. So what have been the highlights for me throughout this whole process? Well, I think the ongoing highlight has to be the fact that I'm just constantly amazed at how many views my videos get. And that gives you a real sense of satisfaction. So there's nothing really to beat that. But also, as an inveterate distro hopper, I mean, what I do allows me to look at all these distros out there and explore Linux in a little bit more detail, almost without having to install it myself on hardware, which is great, because I get a really good overview of what's going on. And I still think some of the highlights, the Linux Mint videos always do really well. So do the Ubuntu videos. And I think of all the videos that I've looked at, for user-friendly distros, I think we're still at the Ubuntu and the Linux Mint situation. I don't think much has changed over the last year. For me personally, I think Mint is just starting to edge ahead slightly, just in terms of its feel and its look. But that's a completely subjective thing. Ubuntu Mate used to be my default quick setup distro, but I think if I do that in the future, it's probably going to go over to Mint. Now, having said that, I rarely install distros on my hard drives. And there's a reason for that. It's because I've been pretty satisfied, actually, with the system I've got. It started as Ubuntu Mate for the first few videos, but I then sort of defaulted to what my setup had been before that, before I started the videos, which was Arch and Debian. I use Debian exclusively for work. I produce training videos for work, and so my Debian system is set up just for that. But Arch sort of suits me for the day-to-day use. Having said that, I've been really impressed with Void Linux, and I have got Void Linux still installed, but it's not going to overtake Arch, because you just haven't got the variety of packages that are available. You saw when I was doing DWM the other day, I couldn't get that libxft package in Void. I suppose I could compile it, but I just want to install something. So being able to look at all these distros constantly and keep my finger on the pulse, if you like, of the Linux community, I find that a real highlight in itself. Also, window managers. Wow, that was a revelation for me, going from OpenBox to BSPWM to SpectreWM to Xmonad to DWM. Currently on Xmonad as my main desktop, which, to be honest, is pretty much the same experience as it was with SpectreWM. And I'm still working and tweaking DWM, which I have to say I'm really liking. Interestingly enough, I made a comment on my Facebook group, and I said, I've got all my window managers sort of all working in the same way with the key bindings. And someone made a comment, I'm sure you won't mind, mate, when you recognise this, that what's the point of installing them all if they're all going to work the same? Well, the point is, I could get them all configured that way to work as I wanted them. So it wasn't a case of install one thing, it does what I want, and I'll never use anything again. I mean, I did it because I can and because I want to explore, and I want to find out if I can configure a system to work as I want it. And I have multiple window managers installed on this system. They're small, they take up very little space, they don't tend to conflict with each other, and I swap and change, and I doubt that I'm ever really going to go back. So highlights, yeah, it's been the constant views, the comments, and I do go through the comments all the time. It's being able to keep my finger on the pulse, and it's the discovery of window managers, which have been a little bit of a revelation to me. So where are we going in the future? Well, let's move on and talk about that. So where are we going from here? Well, I'm just going to keep on doing what I do and keep on producing videos because I enjoy them. And also, you know, keep making the suggestions, guys. I make big lists, and it's good to see what people are interested in seeing. Some of them I may make, some of them I may not make. If I don't end up making them, it'll be for one of two reasons, really. One, because I'm just not interested in the topic itself, although I'm pretty flexible there. But secondly, I may be coming against the limits of my technical ability. I think, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. So if I don't do them, that could be one of the reasons. But generally speaking, I'll work through them and I'll produce videos as much as possible. Now, recently, I've been setting, I suppose, the channel up on more of a formal basis. And I suppose it started when I was thinking about the long-term future of the channel. And I do see this as a long-term thing. And certainly at the moment, the amount of money that it brings in isn't crucial for me. But I would like to think that, you know, in the long term, that as I start to approach retirement, it could, let's face it, become a source of very valued income. Nevertheless, the money that I've been earning through ads has been quite useful. But there are lots of things I want to do with the channel. I want to move into the cabin, and there's a lot of work needs doing for that. I need to the internet here. I've still got internet coming across along copper cables on telegraph poles, which is why I've not done live streams, because it's painful, and I need to explore some alternatives to that. Perhaps moving down to the cabin and getting some sort of dedicated internet connection in there. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. I would like to upgrade my hardware, get something that isn't going to take hours to render every video, to just make things a little better, to get more lighting, and to get it more on a professional basis, if you like. Although I don't think I'm not going to change, but the kit and caboodle that goes with it costs a fair bit of money. So I had decided, and I felt a bit cheeky doing this, but I decided, well, you know, everyone out there is doing Patreon, and perhaps when I get to 10,000 views, I'll launch a Patreon site and just see if, you know, people want to. No pressure. I'll never do Patreon-only videos that the rest of people don't see, but I actually set something up a few months ago, a skeleton site. Didn't intend it to be used, not by any stretch of the imagination. And all of a sudden this week, who was it? Entropy UK. I got an email saying Entropy UK has become your first patron. could have knocked me down with a feather, because I wasn't actually at the point of launching the Patreon site. So that gave me a push, really. And so I got on to finish the page, and I woke up this morning and another 3 people have joined. I'm stunned. I really am stunned. So that's a thing now. That's a thing. And if you decide to, join, thank you guys. I'm still working out what the benefits will be, but it's definitely going to include such things as, early notification of the videos that are coming up, and perhaps sneak peeks a day or 2 before they actually get published. And I'm working out how it's going to go. So if you do decide that you'd like to support me through Patreon, great. If you don't, great. Just keep watching. Whatever you do, please subscribe. It does make a difference to that horrible YouTube algorithm. What else have I been doing? Oh, yeah. Let's go to the split screen. I watched a video by Luke Smith, and he did one on putting together your own website, and he went to vulture.com, vultr.com, and got himself a cheap VPS for $3.50 a month. And I thought, that looks really interesting. So I did the same. And I put together an Nginx web server, which is not something I've done for many years. And I thought, do I go static site, or do I just put a WordPress thing there? So I downloaded WordPress. I've not played with WordPress before, and I've managed to put a basic site together. Again, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this at the moment. The site has got links to all the places that I am, my YouTube channel, Reddit, Twitter. I don't really go on Twitter. I just post a video there once a week. Pretty much the same with Mastodon, and obviously a link to my GitHub page there. And I added this the other day, a link to the Patreon page. I'm also kind of set up a video with a plugin that streams all my latest videos. So a blog, haven't really got stuck into that properly at the moment, but I'm going to. And due to popular request, I've got some merch going. I don't think this is going to be an earner. I don't even know if this is going to work, but it's not very hard to set up a merch store. So I got my son to develop a couple of logos, and I've opened a Spreadshirt store and a Teespring store with a couple of mugs. We'll see. I went for Spreadshirt because I'm a rather large bloke, and I know that their sweatshirts actually fit me. So if you want any merch, there's links to the merch there. And you can contact me on any of the channels. If I'm honest, I've put this site together so that I've got an off YouTube vehicle for doing certain things. I'm very aware that YouTube really don't like you putting things like, various links in your video descriptions that's going to take a customer off site. So I thought it just makes sense to have somewhere extra. How this is going to develop, who knows? Obviously, there's the Patreon page there, and we've got 4 now, so I'm pretty amazed with that. So, so I've been busy, perhaps setting things up for the next year, and I'm hoping the Patreon is eventually going to bring in the funds to allow me to get more kit and caboodle and get things set up, because that becomes an expensive old game after a while. But so that's where we are. It's been a great year. It's been hard. I really can't understand how I've got 100 videos out there. The time just seems to have gone so fast. But that's where we are at the moment. So that's the end of this ramble. A bit all over the place maybe, but hope you've enjoyed it, just finding out a little bit about what's been happening. Don't forget, guys, join me on the Facebook group. That's becoming really popular now. And if you would like to contribute by Patreon, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the guys who have come on board, the 4. We have a premium member, Corbinian Schilderman. Thanks very much, mate. And also Stormpix, Mike Long, and Entropy UK. Those are the 3 guys who are going to make this channel possible next year and for it to be all it could be. Now, enjoy yourselves. I'll see you during the next video and have a great weekend. Thank you.